So last time we talked about the interesting phenomenon that of the Aseret HaDibrot, most of them are negative, right, or prohibitions, and we talked about why that might be the case. If it's because if the framing of it is this obedience to like a vassal contract. In the ancient Near East context, so then Fishbane argues that makes sense, that prohibitions are going to take the pride of place. But as we noted, that only highlights the fact that the lengthy assays, mostly Shabbos, Kibbud Avim is short, but the two assays in the middle, and especially the long one, since they are outliers, both in the sense that they're positive commandments, and the sense that they are, in the case of Shabbos at least, the longest of the Aseret HaDibrot. Again, words to letters, as Gavi counted last time. Okay, fine, but clearly it stands out, and you've got to ask why. Obviously there are many reasons we could talk about. Cass, though, points out something interesting, which is the following. I think this is something that's worth paying attention to. I think he's right to note it. I think you could take it in different directions, but I think it's worth at least noting. And that is that it's interesting that this first, that Shabbat, which takes up so much space in the Aseret HaDibrot, in a text which is introduced as a particularist text. Wait, Gabi, I can probably mute it. 1 second. Let me see. Can I do that? Can I do that? Yeah, I can do it. There you go. Okay, Gavi, I muted it. You can... Gavi, I muted it. Sorry, we're just hearing a lot of background there. Okay, so for Shabbat, what's interesting is that if you think about it, what is the theological event that Shabbat is commemorating? All right, I muted you. You can't say that. But so in Dvarim, in Va'etchanan, when we have the Aseret HaDibrot, so then it comes to commemorate the particularist history of the Jewish people, right? Zecher L'Tziat Mitzrayim, just like the beginning of the Aseret HaDibrot, which is predicated on God taking the Jews out of Egypt. What's amazing is that this longest of the Dibrot, Shabbat, actually doesn't do that, right? In the Aseret HaDibrot, which is introduced as a particular command to the Jewish people, at least in the first Dibrot, Shabbat is said to commemorate the creation of the world, which is about as universalistic as you can possibly get. Meaning, it's commemorating the creation of the world before there were different nations, before there were different people. And that does seem to be important, right? Meaning the fact that Anochi Hashem Elokecha Asher Tziticha Me'eretz Mitzrayim opens the Aseret HaDibrot, and it focuses on the particularist relationship of the Jews to God and their historical relationship and what they owe God, to say that the longest of the Dibrot is going to be one which elsewhere in the Torah is actually commemorating that same historical event, but here is focusing on the creation of the world. That does seem to be a nod towards the fact that even if the Aseret HaDibrot are for the Jewish people, the Aseret HaDibrot are, as they have been taken in the Western world, do have a message for all of humanity, right? Even though obviously we say they can't keep Shabbat, but the fact that we invoke the theological moment of creation, which is universalist, does seem to be important in at least indicating that the messages of the Aseret HaDibrot do have a certain something to teach the world. And Cass points out, right, the fact that Shabbat does more than that. It takes this theological event and basically sets in motion a calendar by which we are oriented around a non-natural cycle, right? Meaning months are natural, right? They are based on the moon's rotation, revolution rather, around the earth. And days are natural because they're about the way the earth turns. Weeks are unnatural, right? Hello, Ezra. And they're, the fact that we orient our entire time around a theological structure that assumes that God created the world in 7 days, which without that theological belief, a week doesn't really make any sense. That seems to also be really important, right? So again, first point is that in this Aseret HaDibrot, which is ostensibly a particularist text, we choose Hashem chooses, at least as his president in Yitro rather than Medchanan, to base part of his authority on his relationship to the whole world, and two, that the implications of it are that it orients the way we think about time, and three, the fact that it tells us not just to commemorate, but to mimic what God did, right? To imitate God's creation of the world. Right? All those things seem to be relevant to understanding why Shabbat gets to be one of the few positive commandments and gets so much space, because it really packs a lot of theological points into the Aseret HaDibrot. He notes, though, and I'm not sure I agree with this 100%, but it's an interesting point, that in a certain sense, the contrast between Shabbat and Kibbud Vaem is striking. Because Shabbat, as presented here, is the creation of the world, is the most universalist thing. It's before there were people, right? It's God creates everything, the cosmos, right? It's about as big picture as you could possibly get. But on the other hand, Kibbud Vaem is radically particularistic. Right, because Kibbud Vaem says that part of being religious is to respect your parents, right? Your personal creators, right? It's not even just particularist in the sense that we normally think of, like the Jewish people versus all of humanity. It's about as particularist as you get, which is to remind you that part of religion is to recognize you personally, as an individual, your relationships in life, your personal creator, the people you're personally responsible to. So he suggests that it could be that besides for all the independent theological messages that are packed into Shabbat, making it that the two assays in the Aseret HaDibrot, again, bracketing Anochi Hashem Elokecha, everyone understand that, one, invoking God as the creator of the cosmos, which is as big picture as possible, and then following it up with Kibbud Vaem, which is as personal as possible, right? You should remember your relationships. So he argues that seems to be at least part of what's going on here, which is to remind us that part of our religious relationships, right, it's that complexity of integrating both the universal and thinking about God and the creation of the cosmos and our place in the world and the universe and all that. That's part of religiosity. But so is Kibbud Vaem, which is remembering where you came from personally and respecting the responsibilities that emerge from your personal relationships. And I think that insight is interesting. I do think there is something there. This where there is this, sort of right central in the Aseret HaDibrot, this super universalist and this super particularist emphasis, highlighting that both of those are part of religious life. Okay, those are some insights on that. We'll try to do Shir at